All right, let's get into it. Today, we're going to lay out the ultimate roadmap. And I'm not just talking about, getting a little better at chess. We are going all the way to the top, exploring the real journey to its highest peak, the title of Grandmaster. Let's dive right in. So what is it really? What's the actual difference between a really strong club player and a titled master? I bet it's a question you've asked yourself. And you know what? The answer is, well, it's way more complex than just being good at chess or memorizing a bunch of openings. It's really a mix of mindset, a trial by fire in competition, and finally, getting that official stamp of approval. Here's a good way to think about it. Becoming a grandmaster is kind of like becoming a licensed architect. I mean, you can't just be good at drawing, right? First, you need the blueprint. That's the deep strategic knowledge. Then you need the construction site. That's the competitive world where you prove your blueprints actually work. And finally, you need that official piece of paper, the certification, that says, yep, you're an architect. These are our three pillars. So let's start with that first pillar, the mind of a master. This is the absolute foundation, that internal blueprint. It's all about building a way of thinking that goes so much deeper than just looking for tactics and checkmates. See, a master isn't just calculating moves. They're creating these deep, often really subtle strategic plans. And to really get a feel for this, we're going to look at some fantastic examples from Grandmaster Miloš Ratkovich's book, Drill Your Chess Strategy. These really show how a master sees the hidden potential just sitting there in a position. Okay, check this out. Here we have a conflict between what seems like a logical move and what's actually a dynamic one. Most of us would see that open C-file and just automatically play the rook there. And yeah, it makes sense. But a grandmaster sees that this is kind of passive, and it lets black get comfortable. Instead, this surprising move, 1a4, just throws a wrench in the works. It creates a whole new problem over on the side of the board. It makes black react, maybe create a weakness, and that makes white's original idea on the C-file way more powerful later on. It's all about proactive, dynamic thinking. And this is a perfect example of long-term planning. I mean, the move knight to e1 looks so weird, right? It's moving backward. It's not attacking anything. But the GM isn't thinking about right now. They're thinking 5-6 moves down the line. They see that knight on c2 is basically just a spectator. But if it could just get to the c5 square, it would be an absolute monster. So one knight to e1 is just the first step on this long journey to completely transform the position. So the big takeaway here is this. Master-level strategy isn't about finding one single good move. It's about finding the right plan for the long haul, It's about improving your worst pieces and creating these subtle problems for your opponent. It's about telling a story with your pieces for the next 10 or 15 moves. Okay, so you've worked on developing the mind of a master. You've got the blueprint. But a blueprint is pretty useless until you actually start building. And that brings us to pillar number 2, forged in competition. This is where all that theory smacks right into reality, and your skills get put to the ultimate test. The way players are forged in that fire has changed so much. The old way, it was really exclusive, really expensive. You had to have a top-tier coach and enough money to travel all over the world. But the modern path? It's a completely different ballgame. All that knowledge has been democratized. This quote from Chess Life magazine just nails it. Technology has completely leveled the playing field. Having access to these ridiculously powerful chess engines for analysis and online service for practice, it means that all the resources that used to be only for the absolute elite are now available to pretty much anyone with an internet connection and the will to get better. And this is the new reality, right? Success in the competitive world is now this blend of human creativity and raw computational power. Players use engines to prep their openings, to analyze their games with brutal honesty, and to find these deep strategic ideas they might have missed. It's made everyone better, faster, and it's raised the bar for what it even means to be a top competitor. So, you have the mind of a master. You've proven your strength in the heat of competition. Now, it's time for the final step, getting the official certification. Let's dig into Pillar 3 and see how a player actually earns that official, lifelong title of Grandmaster. Now, this isn't some subjective thing. You can't just be considered a Grandmaster by your friends. The title is a formal, permanent award, and it's given out by the world's governing body of chess, the International Chess Federation, or FIDE. They make the rules, and believe me, they are incredibly strict. Okay, the key thing to understand here is the title norm. This is really the heart of the whole process. A norm is basically proof
proof that you performed at a grandmaster level in one specific super high-stakes international tournament. And the analogy of a bar exam is just perfect. You don't just pass one big test, you have to prove your elite skill multiple times under very specific conditions.
So how do you actually get a norm? Well, you have to achieve what's called a performance rating of at least 2,600. Now, to put that into perspective for you, a rating of 2,500 is already considered grandmaster strength. So a 2,600 performance means you're playing like a top-tier, world-class elite player for the entire tournament. That is an almost unbelievably high standard to hold up over 9 or more games.
All right, let's just lay out the official checklist from FIDE. Plain and simple. First, at some point, your published reading has to have hit that 2,500 mark. Second, you need to earn 3 of those incredibly difficult GM norms we were just talking about. And third, those 3 norm performances have to add up to a total of at least 27 games.
Let's just pause on that number for a second. 2,500. This is the rating that officially separates an international master from a grandmaster. It is the benchmark for elite status in the chess world, a milestone every single aspiring pro dreams of hitting.
And hey, if you thought a 2,600 performance rating sounded hard, get a load of the tournament conditions. Just to even have a chance at a norm, the field you're playing in has to be incredibly strong. Your opponent's average rating has to be super high. Half of them need to already be titled players, and at least a third of them have to be grandmasters already. Oh, and it has to be an international event. You simply cannot earn a norm playing at your local club tournament.
So at the end of the day, this isn't a matter of opinion. The FIDE title is earned through this grueling, completely objective process. When you see those letters GM next to a player's name, it is undeniable proof that they belong among the very best on the entire planet. And there you have it, the 3 pillars of mastery. It all starts with building that strategic mind. Then, it's tested in the competitive arena. And finally, it's sealed by earning the official title. Every single pillar is essential. You just can't become a grandmaster without mastering all 3. You know, this quote from GM Alexander Fishbane really brings it all home for me. The discipline, the strategic thinking, that competitive drive, these aren't just skills you use on a chessboard. The kind of dedication it takes to master this game, it builds a mindset that has an impact on every single part of your life. So, the path to Grandmaster, it isn't some big, unknowable secret. The roadmap is actually pretty clear. It demands that deep strategic thinking, a relentless competitive spirit, and a level of dedication that, frankly, very few people can sustain over the many years it takes to get there. We've laid out the blueprint, the construction site, and the final certification. You literally have the full roadmap right in front of you. So the question really isn't how to do it anymore. The only question left is, when are you going to begin your journey?
Thanks so much for watching. If you're ready to start your own journey, make sure to subscribe for more guides to help you get there.